So you see, it requires tremendous observation. You see, the ego is very cunning. When you compare, if you compare well, you feel good. But if you compare not well, you feel depressed. Right? It's the same thing. It's the same ego things. The ego is comparing, but the ego is the comparison. That's why most of us are tricked by a verse. Ego is ego, comparison is comparison. But it's the illusion induced by the verse. But what is the actual? What is the actual thing? It's beyond the verse. But if you trapped by the reaction to the verse, think, oh, ego and comparison is something different, and then you get lost forever. But when you really look, observe, perceive, demands your hard work, you'll find that comparing and the ego is the same thing. You won't go there. You will stay away from comparison because comparison immediately bring back the ego. It's the same thing. It's the same process. Not one first, 1 second. No, it's the same thing. You see, we have been so trapped by the language in many big ways. Like the Dutch people are trapped by the Dutch verse. Words are never the thing. But we take the verse as a thing, don't we? Why do you want that? Observe yourself. Why do you want to socialize? But when you want to socialize, observe it. Why do you want that? Do you feel isolated? Do you want... We see this. Why socialization becomes something so important in the society? Isn't that because we are all isolated? And a human being can't be isolated. Cannot, of course cannot. But we are all isolated, and we want to socialize, but we don't have a relationship. When one is really in relationship, what is the place of the socializing? Or perhaps we don't really need to socialize when we're really in relationships with everything. When one is really in relationships with everything, one is not isolated at all. So you see, we are becoming so verbal. We rely on verse. And we express the self via verse. And we rely on verse for positivities, for presences. And you see, our life becomes so verbal, trapped by the verse all the time. And everybody has their unique word to define themselves. And we all get trapped by the verse. Is that because is that the reason that we get separated by a verse? Because words are not a thing, but we take the words as a thing. What are words? So, you see, we need to go into this question a little deep. What is language? What is your relationship with language? Are you the verse? Or you are different from the verse? we so dependent on verse to express our feelings. And in that dependence, verse become all powerful. So we don't really observe that we are dependent on verse, but we feel the power of the verse. So let's be quiet now to go into this. What is language? A little deeper. Mm-hmm. Symbols, right? Language is a symbols and a combination of symbols. And symbols create the word, and the word creates the sentences and the paragraphs. And we give the pronunciation to each alphabet, and also to the word, to the sentence, also have the tone of the sentence. So language is a bunch of symbols, so to speak, isn't it? And we give meaning to it, to each word, and to the combination of the word, to the grammar, right? The combination of words make a sentence. We all give meaning to it. But the problem is that, are we really observing that? Or we have been conditioned to that already? Because we are educated from birth, right, to learn to speak a language. And the mind relies on the language so much and thinks that the language is me. I'm the language. So see that feeling. Because we don't really question it. We get used to it. And we think the word is everything. And the whole world, the society, is based on words. And as human beings, it's part of the intelligence to use language, isn't it? And we have this language, we use it in every way. Like to buy food in the shop or to ask people for different things. We need to use a word to express it. But like I say, an apple. Just observe. When the speaker says apple, say what is your image in your head. Perhaps you think about a red apple, and you think about a green apple, and you think about a computer. Do you see the problem here? The same word triggers different images in thoughts, but we ignore it totally. We think the words can fully express ourselves, right? But actually, a very simple example, ample. Or we say a cup. Maybe you think a transparent cup. I say a mug. You see, the word always triggers different images. So this verbal communication is always compromised. It's always compromised. But why do you rely on words so much? Why do you take the words as a thing? Because you don't see it. But if you see it, what happens? You will be very careful with the words, with what people says, their comment, their viewpoint. And when you begin to realize that, see what takes place between you and the language. And you say, oh, the me, the self, it's also based on verse. And not only I, everybody else is wanting to express themselves via verse. What's the point? Only make more noises. more nonsense, more confusions. And if you take the verse seriously, you get trapped. The speaker does not condemn the language, but he's pointing out the traps. So, because we are not observing it, we are conditioned to the language from the youth. That's why we identify ourselves with the language. Oh, I'm a Dutch. I'm English. I'm Indian. I'm Chinese. See how stupid it is. Because we identify ourselves with the language. And the words are always compromised and divisive. You see? When the mind relies on words, we are always separated. But the real feeling, that kind of this totality, this oneness, this truth, is beyond any verse. But if the mind is merely dependent on verse, the mind ignoring the truth. And all our knowledge, all our thoughts are carried by verse. So the mind is always in the known, busy all the time, chattering, right? The mind is always chattering because the word is there. But if we are really looking now, learning, the mind is very silent. But we don't do that. We always talking, thinking in verse, expressing in verse. And then we sharing the verse through the internet, through all kinds of media. What is silence? You can't imagine something called silent. When you think about that silence, that's not silence at all. Silence means that the mind has no contradiction at all, no confusion. Don't think about that, madam. Do it. If you think about that, you are measuring. I can do that all the time. It's still also the measurement. You see, the mind is still traveling in time. All the time, it's still in time. Because the mind still rely on verse to know something. Right, madam? Because when you think in that way, you also want to use the verse to get a sense of certainty. So the mind still want to know something. But that's still the issue of the language, the verse. Busy all the time. When you're really at this moment, the verse stay in the right place, but the mind stays unknown. This moment is unknowing. What you know is not this moment. Because when you are knowing something, it is still the functioning of the verse, playing, replaying in the head to trigger the images, thoughts. When you really know, you are nothing. You can't describe it. We are nothing. And because it is in the state of unknown, not an image of nothing. You see how tricky it is. But the mind is in the unknown. So what you may hear may be very in opposite to what you know in your daily life. Because the mind is always conditioned to the whole society. But when you really look, stop to look, it is so. I'm not the verse. The words are not me. The real life is beyond any verse. Verse has its place. But I can't rely on verse psychologically. And when we really go into this, perhaps we can find what is the simplicity of living. Learning is learning. Madam, growing also means development. It's still kind of measurement all the time. Forget about growing. That's only learning. Learning is not something to accumulate, not through the verse, through the knowledge, but always learning at this moment. Observe, empathy, staying unknown. Be with this moment, be with what is. Because what is the unknown. What is known is what should be, what should not be. Which also the product of verse, the thoughts, the exertion of the will. I must be. I will become this, become that. They are all verbal things, meaningless to this moment at all. Hmm? Yeah. Yeah. I think so for so that's the another trap, madam. Because you know to imagine, you are imagining that situation. And then that imagination, hmm, madam. So if the speaker is allowed to speak in the most respectful, because you are still thinking from the ego, and you still have want to control something. But if you really let go any control, and what is the actual life is beyond your imagination. It's not that you just keep sitting there doing nothing. That's not meditation. At this moment, at each moment, no matter what you do, can the mind have no sense of me at all? That's meditation. Not just sitting here or doing nothing or sitting under the tree. That's not meditation. But, sir, madams, look at this world. They are boosting meditation in that way, right? Doing sitting for 10 hours. For what? Life is very dynamic. But can you live a life without me? Then what you do is no longer relevant. So don't imagine what is meditation like. Meditation is not some method sitting here. That's rather superficial. The real thing is that to live a life without me, no matter what you do, you can still do your work. You can still do anything, but without this self-image. That's the real meditation. And there's no contradiction. There's no division. Else, I will have a mind over sitting under the tree, and then I will go back to the old loop. There's no meaning at all. But if I live a life without me whatsoever, no matter what I do, life is total, complete. There's no contradictions. So that's why, madam, it depends on you to act at each moment, to really observe yourself, to see the reactions, to see, to really be aware, the me. And that awareness deeply dissolves me. No say, I must not have me. Then I must not. It's still the exertion of the will, still the me. But I'm fully aware of the me all the time. see the reaction. When I really see it, the mind doesn't react at all. And then that's the lifetime process, this moment by moment awareness. And there's no issue at all. There's only what is. And life is totally transformed. You see, nothing mysterious. Nothing spiritual. It's not something spiritual. It's just a life. It's a human life. With this totality, oneness. It's no division, no contradiction. But it's up to you, to everybody, to act. And really be experiencing. That's very important. Be experiencing, not experienced or will experience. It's be experiencing. Where there's no experiencer at all, no me at all. There's only experiencing. Be experiencing, be observing, be seeing, be acting. No me at all. Of course. So I think that's enough for today's talk.